We asked political analyst Levy Ndou whether or not coalitions are they the shape of things to come right here in South Africa. Thank you so much for your time, Levy. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, a day after the elections in August 2016, it became very clear we'd be sitting with hung municipalities, probably paving way for coalition parties, coalition governments. So my question for you this afternoon, are coalitions our future? And, will they benefit South Africans in terms of a service delivery?
Good afternoon, Unati. Good afternoon to the viewers at home. Indeed, Unati, 2016 has taught us that it is possible not to have only one party being dominant and have other parties gaining support. And that brings an establishment of coalitions. And if we look at the voting patterns, especially in the metros in South Africa, then there is a possibility that indeed we might still be able to be getting more and more coalitions if the voting patterns do not change. And I think 2016 has also brought into us a learning curve to say that we've been able to learn what are the challenges in a coalition and also the advantages that actually exist with coalitions. And I think if we are confronted with the same situation come November the 1st, political parties must then be able to build up on what has happened from 2016 and come up with something much better that would actually, at the end of the day, benefit the citizens as government is actually established for the benefit of the citizens.
Now, depending on who you listen to, most political party leaders are saying and are very adamant that, residents should come before politics. And then it begs the question, what then is the task of a coalition government? What are the pros and cons? Do political parties themselves know, what their responsibilities lie? And as I've just said, can you actually put residents before politics?
Well, I think it actually depends on how you have actually decided to work together as different political parties in a coalition. I think firstly, it's important also to identify the main advantages of having coalitions. When you have coalitions, you also have the voice of the minority parties because their views are also going to be heard. Minority parties or smaller parties would also be able to be a determinant factor in terms of decision making in a municipality because they will be working together with other political parties. At the same time, even though political parties come or have their own backgrounds, coalitions will provide an opportunity for political parties to learn what other political parties are doing, which is in the best interest of the populations at large. The unfortunate part of, or the disadvantages of coalitions, Unati, are that in the South African situation, coalition negotiations and activities are only left to the leaders of the different political parties. And the local leaders that are being paraded on a regular basis at different rallies might not or they don't matter at all. The very same leaders at national level are the ones who go down and impose coalitions and which parties different or are their leaders are supposed to work with. That is one disadvantage of a coalition because national leaders might not be in a position to understand the dynamics at a local level. Number two, ordinary voters who vote for these parties during elections are not consulted when coalitions are being established. And that creates a lot of frustration on the part of the voters because they end up not knowing exactly what is happening in government and about the leaders that they actually voted for. All the time, we hear politicians bashing each other, talking bad about political party A or B. And when coalition time comes, the very same people who are criticizing each other would be working together. And that indeed creates frustration on the part of ordinary citizens. Another important aspect is that some partners in a coalition would enter into a coalition with ulterior motives and create an environment that is not workable and make unrealistic demands to their coalition partners. And that creates a lot of instability in the municipalities. And if we have to look at what has happened in South Africa since 2016, we know of what has been going on, the instability that has been going on in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality. We know of the situation that has been going on in the city of Tshwane and a number of other municipalities where the, coalitions have been in existence. And that, for me, is supposed to be seen as a learning curve, where politicians must sit down and say, because of the mistakes that we've made in these other municipalities and metros, how best can we work and make sure that the ordinary citizens at the end of the day become the sole beneficiaries?
I mean, you raise some important points and pertinent points, particularly where you talk about the instability. So my question then is, we know that it's very difficult to predict what will happen in these elections that we are going into now, but we already get a sense that we're probably going to be, again, sitting with coalitions, particularly in those major metros that we are currently sitting in and that you've just mentioned. Now, where does the power lie in as far as the voter is concerned? I mean, one of the things, the metros that you mentioned is Tshwane. We've just been to Tshwane recently. We went to Hammanskraal, where, as you know, because of the instability that coalitions, can cause, we have people in Hammanskraal that have been sitting without clean drinking water for many years now. And it seems like there is no sense of urgency. So as we head to these elections, with that prospect in mind in terms of coalitions, governments, where does the power lie for the voter?
Well, I think first of all, we need to acknowledge the fact that politicians would not determine what has to happen in the ballot box. Coalitions are actually imposed on political parties by the voters. And when there is no outright winner, the unfortunate or fortunate situation is that we have to head for a coalition. Voters are the ones who force political parties to come together and ensure that they make things work. And I think it will require a highest degree of maturity on the part of the politicians to ensure that whatever agreement that they enter into should be in the best interest of the citizens. And I'm happy that we have actually highlighted the example of Hammanskraal. One of the challenges that we face with coalitions is that coalition partners would always want to be mentioned when good things have actually happened, and they would not want to be associated with any failure. And that is why I think it is important for coalitions to be regulated, so that when there are good things that the municipality has done and bad things that has actually happened, they should actually be both responsible for what has actually happened in the running of the municipality. And because there is no framework that exists and it is not properly regulated, that is why some partners in a coalition might then decide to exclude themselves from some of the failures in a coalition, which is one of the challenges that we actually face. In some instances, you would get some members or partners in a coalition saying that we actually do not have a coalition. What we have is just an agreement. And in some instances, you would have a situation where coalition partners or political parties would say, Ours is based on an issue-to-issue basis, meaning that there is no coalition. We only agree only when it is necessary. And that actually happens only where there is no proper framework or regulations that are set that has to guide how coalitions are supposed to work. But I think we also need maturity on the part of politicians to ensure that whatever decisions they make, whatever they do in a council, should be in the best interest of citizens, and citizens must at the end of the day say, this is one coalition, like the coalition in Ekurhuleni, that has never had disruptions, and it has actually worked for all of us.
All right, Levy Ndou, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and your analysis. That's political analyst Levy Ndou there.